they kind of start off as females and get changed into these part predators that are kind of delusional about their predation and how it makes them so sick and destructive to society, and then live in this kind of fantasy where in fact they're the ones causing all the progress. Uh, Now, for comparison, women's functions in the ancestral group were foragers and child rearers. They have evolved adaptations to help them do this. They have, uh, these great stuff, and it helps them raise babies. It helps them serve their function, and uh, they also study has suggested that women can see on average more colors than men, which makes sense. It would be good for foraging. Uh, But they also seem, on average, to be more people-oriented and child-oriented, revealed by the jobs they usually select. And also, it seems they have higher emotional intelligence scores on average. So which makes sense. That's the primary goal. They have to be very emotionally aware to take care of their babies, whereas men have to be more like emotionally blunted to not feel the pain of their kill. It's very important to note these are predispositions. They don't mean all women and men are like this. It means on average they have predispositions for these things to fulfill genetic predispositions for these things to fulfill their ancestral functions. And how else would they do it? Just like the ants. They have to have these set of genes to help them uh, perform their functions. Uh, in the same way, people have these genes, but they're genetic predispositions. It's on average that they have them, and it doesn't mean that they will always have them. And our environment can override them or even exacerbate them. We can raise our boys to be very gentle and caring of life, and we can hurt our girls so that they grow minds that become more predatory. It all mainly boils down to the environment provided, and we love them no matter what they have developed. That's what they have, and we love them no matter how they have developed. That's what they need is love. And they couldn't really control the environment or genes that developed them and their adaptations. Humans are helpless to how their adaptations make them move. So it's really mainly determined by their environment, their behavior is, more than these predispositions. However, the environment initially created by men, this is the big point here, the environment initially created by men, afflicted with this alpha predator male agency, creates a very hostile and predatory environment, which influences everyone to be hostile. So it may be, yes, the more than being a male or a female is the environment determines their behavior. However, the environment initially created by men, the machine environment, where kind of patriarchy environment, uh, is very destructive and makes everyone be violent, the women, the children, and other men. So why alpha predator male agency? Why not something else? Bonobos and chimps, uh, great examples of matriarchal and patriarchal animals and our closest relatives. So they offer insights into what happens in our own societies when they are in patriarchal or matriarchal arrangements. Bonobos, zero in-group recorded homicides. Um, they whereas chimps have these, are much more violent. And this is a difference, yes, between the mating strategies, a lot of, and the functions, the adaptation distribution. So the male descriptor of this label is representative of the alpha predator male. The male descriptor of this alpha predator male label is representative of this kind of mating strategy, of maximizing the number of replications. Uh, The male descriptor in alpha predator male is also an annotation, especially in humans, to the concentration of alpha predator male adaptations and their distribution in male Homo sapiens. Uh, so the male represents in the alpha predator male the mating. When you see the male, you think of the mating strategy and the adaptation distribution, and that's what makes that alpha predator even more uh, destructive. Alpha predator groups are destructive, but when it's alpha predator male, that's the peak of destructive groups, predatory groups. So it's not their fault though. This male part you know uh, uh, is something that can be overcome. This kind of like this illness attached to the female that is kind of the male. Poor guys, and they don't know. It's like this like demon that gets attached to them, and then it destroys everything. And they're delusional about this demon, and they don't understand. They need help with that demon. Those demons they've inherited. So in conclusion to alpha predator male agency. Well, first of all, so you got to really think of when you say males, it's like when the men. It's not their fault. It's just like these old functions they've had to serve, and their adaptation distribution, and the how the mating routine is what it is, and they can't help that, and they just need help with it. They're like, yes, in a way, like sickened females, and they just need help to get out of that sickness and back into their like feminine, more powerful form. Which isn't, you just care for stuff. Instead of hunting animals, you care for animals. Instead of, you know, hitting your child, you discipline them in better ways, in more ethical ways, like timeouts and stuff. I feared timeouts more than anything, really, especially if they're long ones. Okay, so in conclusion to alpha predator male agency, men's agency seem to be selected to have alpha predator male agency biases in their social understandings, as this is what helped maximize the number of replications. It's not men are bad. The potential for familial agency has always been in man. The female's always in there. It's just that's not what's selected for, to maximize the number of replications of men in alpha state of large scale societies. It's So it's more like the game of natural selection is making the players, these men, not the players in of themselves. Natural selection is selecting the decisions of man. So to reiterate, men are not bad. Men have two main potentials: this more familial one and this more oppressive one. Alpha predator male one. It's just this more oppressive one is more selected for. Good guys finish last quote is kind of true. They don't really make it to the top. They're often killed off or subjugated by alpha predator male agencies, which control society with force. I don't really like to use the term good guys or bad guys. They're all just family who are misguided by the forces of evolution and who need help. I'd say instead more family agency is selected for in the beginnings in all men. I'm sorry. Instead, I wouldn't say, good guys finish last. I'd say more familial agency. Familial agency isn't really selected for in the beginnings, but all of men have this potential, and they just need help activating it. The good guys can only finish in the end, though. The more familial win. The more familial mind states win the game of civilization and progress the Kardashev scales. Kardashev scale. Alpha predator male genes. So, alpha predator male genes are more selected for than extremely familial ones in the beginning of larger scale human societies. But most importantly, alpha predator male agencies are more likely to rise to the top of the dominance hierarchy. So you could have a population of men that may not have genetic predispositions for this predatory behavior, but if it's just a small amount of them do, those men rise to the top and subjugate the rest and affect them with their culture. So you could have a million good men, or I should say, million men with genetic predispositions to be greatest, father that could ever be. But you'd only need like, you know, 500 of them or so, if they have the right technology, to not have those genetic predispositions and instead have predispositions for extreme violence and predation. And those men naturally gravitate to the top. There's alpha predator male predispositions. And when they do, they spread their culture to everyone so that everyone becomes more like them. So even though the men had all these predispositions to be familial, this kind of environment, this culture overrides it, and they become more predatory, like the people controlling them, and that the more predatory, like the men that rose to the top and now control them, just like Game of Thrones. That's the only reason why Game of Thrones exists, is because this group of predatory men have rose to the top of Hollywood, made all this nasty, nasty media, contaminated everyone, polluted them to the point where they're now like them. So, and they can't help it. We love them. So, Alpha Predator Male Agency, and we love all the Game of Thrones fans, and they're just sick and just need help with their pollution. This kind of sad kind of pollution. I should say now their mind states are more like them. So alpha predator males genes. Oh yes, okay, we did that. Okay. So it's the genes matter, but what's much more matters is the culture. And the thing is, people with these genes tend to rise to the top and then create this culture, and then this culture overrides all the other genes, even if they are more familial. Even if so, yeah. So familial agency isn't about getting to the top and controlling everyone. It's about helping people control themselves, creating a more democratic society where everyone has a say-so. So of course this doesn't make it to the top. Making it to the top of the hierarchy is not what this agency is about. It's about evolving out of the hierarchy. Those old adaptations, evolving out of those old adaptations into new adaptations where everyone has a say-so. So of course, familial agency isn't going to get to the top. That all the people of those million men that have this more familial agency, they're not concerned with getting to the top and controlling everyone. So they don't, and so they lose by the people that do. So that's why the good guy doesn't win. The good guy gets dominated, so to speak. The good guy, so to speak, the more familial agency. So always important to note that we shouldn't perceive people as not bad, as we shouldn't perceive people as bad or undesirable for having these alpha predator male adaptations or predispositions in their genes, or kind of alpha predator male memory system inside their mind. Instead, they should be perceived as sick with these old adaptations that all natural sapient life needs help with and didn't have a choice in having. People aren't just defined by their current agency or mind. they are also defined by the systems which change this mind and agency. Some would argue that last bit is what most defines people. Many animals have a mind state, an agency, but one of the most defining characteristics of people is that they can change this agency in mind. They have this kind of they have this memory system, and people think, I am my memory system and I am my behaviors. But I think more of like, you are the thing that changes your mind. Those the and your behavioral patterns. Behavioral patterns change, memories change, but there's this thing that's changing them, and that's what I like to think of mainly people as. It's like they're not their actions and their memory systems, they're the thing that changes them. And that's the most defining characteristic, in fact, of the human mind, over in contrast to the other animals' minds. Their spiders will weave webs their entire lives, no matter what, and humans can be taught, to run, to do all kinds of different stuff, to stop doing stuff and do new things. In just 3 centuries, we've went from to demonstrate this change. It does happen. It has been happening. Over 3 centuries, we've went from millennia of abject slavery to virtually none. Near ubiquitous discrimination of women, children, and minorities has been changing. There is still some. I shouldn't say virtually none. There's still abject slavery. But we're shifting, on the whole, more towards democratic states of existence instead of totalitarianism. We've been changing from the alpha predator male agency and alpha predator male organization into a more familial agency and organization for thousands of years. Uh, this is all ample evidence that the human mind can change and can continue such change. So sin, or whatever we want to label as immoral or not fully moral behaviors, is not caused by bad people, but by these inhibiting adaptations in people that are no longer adaptive to their environment. And arguably, some of them never were. They were just to spread genes. I mean, they weren't adapted to civilization. I should say, civilization inhibiting adaptation in people. So these adaptations, civilization inhibiting adaptations of their mind, are causing them to do these wrong things, and they need help with these adaptations. In particular, the alpha predator male adaptations. That's the sickness they start off with to make them oppressed and form alpha predator male organization groups. But it has been changing. It has been healing. So we need to help that healing by helping change these old adaptations, by truthfully displaying our own familial adaptations to manifest their own familial adaptations. So to overcome those alpha predator male adaptations, those civilization inhibiting mental adaptations, we have to truthfully display our own familial adaptations and manifest in them these adaptations by that display. Man's perception has adapted to the state of nature. He's not inherently oppressive. He's adaptable, and a resource scarce environment over thousands of years has adapted him to be oppressive. And it's just life has kind of evolved to be oppressive. So man is life. He cannot help but inherit these kind of oppressive tendencies in life. And he just needs help with it.